Meh.
A tyrant who enslaved a nation.
He will destroy us one by one.
Will you stand alone before the fury of his armies?
The Scorpion King.
The Scorpion King, released April 17, 2002, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, directed by Chuck Russell. This is not a review of that. This is a Magic the Gathering deck tech of the Scorpion God. So why the Scorpion God? Well, because it was new and shiny, and I'm a fickle EDH player, and I like to try to brew with the new stuff, and it's not bad. The thing I like about the new gods is that they have this kind of horror movie quality to them, where instead of just being indestructible, they actually, once they die, they go back to your hand at the end of that, or at the end step of that turn. So I found that interesting. I found it very, I'm a big movie buff, horror movie buff as well, and it feels very Michael Myers to me. So that's why I decided to brew with the gods, and this one seemed a lot of fun. It seemed a lot more different than the other ones, were kind of more good stuff, straightforward, out of the newer set of Hour of Devastation. So this god is a lot of fun. So it costs 5. It's 3 and 1 black, 1 red, and you get a 6/5. And whenever a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you get to draw a card, and then you could pay 1 black and a red, and you could put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So that is the Scorpion God, very similar to my Vadi Ildel deck, which was a lot of fun, but it just felt like it was lacking a little bit. That was a black-green, all the way, Vadi Ildel all the way back from Tempest, if you old folks remember, but yeah. So the Scorpion God is a nice big 6/5 beat stick that could also draw you some cards as well. So we're going to start the deck with the creatures in ascending order. We start with the Soul Scar Mage at the 1-drop. He is 1 for a 1/2. He is a Squire. He is a human wizard with prowess. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on target creature. You could have some fun shenanigans. He synergizes well with the deck at the 1-drop spot. What EDH deck at the 1-drop spot, if you're running black, would not be complete without everyone's favorite Viscera Seer, 1 for a 1/1, sack a creature, scry. So with all the drawing in this deck, it's nice to set up your draws with the scrying mechanic. Next, at the 1-drop, we have Hex Parasite. He's 1 for a 1/1, and you could do black or an X, or Phyrexian mana an X, and you could take counters off of things. So it's nice to for killing planeswalkers, because this color tends to struggle a little bit with other kinds of permanents without, not just creature removal. This guy could kill planeswalkers. He could also take -1/-1 counters off our own creatures, which we do put on sometimes. So at the 2-drop spot, we have Stigma Lasher. This guy is an absolute freaking all-star. He is 2 red for a 2/2 with Wither. So Wither, there's a huge mechanic, or there's a huge theme in here, obviously, of -1/-1. So Wither and Infect kind of go into this deck, but it's not a crazy, you're not going to have Friends Infect deck. It just kind of goes with the theme of the -1/-1 counters. But this guy right here, if he is a bear, 2 for a 2/2, but he also has Wither, so he deals combat damage in -1/-1 counters. So if those creatures die and you have your Scorpion God out, you automatically start drawing cards. Also, if he connects to the face, his last ability right here is where he really shines. If he deals combat damage to a player, that player no longer can gain life for the rest of the game, which is huge. That is huge when you're playing an aggro-style deck and you're playing against someone like an Aloro deck or something like that that is a life gainer, or a Karlov deck. That just shuts that player down. So next we have the Plague Mirror, 2 for a 1/1 with Infect, and he also taps for 1 colorless mana. So here comes our Infect creatures. They're not too big, they're not too crazy, but they do combat damage well, and they trade well because of the -1/-1 theme we have. Next, another Infect creature. We have 2 for a 1/1. This is the Necropede. When Necropede is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, you may put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So not only is it kind of wiping something out or making combat miserable, when it dies you get to put a 1/1 counter, so you could take out one of their utility creatures and maybe draw a card or make something a little bit weaker. This deck does really well against other god decks because of the indestructible. It gets around it with the -1/-1. So next we have the Plague Singer, and it is 1 black and 1 for a 1/1 flying with Infect. Nothing too crazy, but we do like those -1/-1 counters. Next we have Reassembling Skeleton. Important, I usually run in any EDH deck I have with black in it, and you could just reanimate them. You could keep kind of drawing cards Skull Clamp style. With this card, you kind of just kill them with your Scorpion God, draw a card, bring him back, do the same thing. It's nice later on as a mana sink. Okay, next we have the Blood Artist, and it's 1 and 1. I don't need to tell you guys what Blood Artist does. With all the things dying and stuff, Blood Artist is fantastic. Alright, on to the 3 spot. We have Corrosive Mentor. This is an all-star card. It is 1 black and 2 for a 1/3. Black creatures you control have Wither, which is just fantastic. Your whole team, all the black cards have Wither, so they all deal damage in -1/-1. This card is an absolute all-star. Talking about all-stars, this is one of the cards that make this deck work. This is the Necroskitter. 1 and 2 black for a 1/4, so he has a huge butt, blocks for days with Wither. Anytime a creature with a -1/-1 counter goes to the graveyard, you put it back into play under your control. This thing is insane. You're going to steal half of your opponent's team if that guy lives. He is a huge target when he comes out. Then we have the Ofnimancer? I don't know how to say this damn card's name. Ofnimancer? I don't know. She's a snake person. She calls snakes. She's 2 and 1 black for a 2/2. And at the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake into the battlefield with Death Touch. So again, kind of reoccurring 1/1 that you could kill with the Scorpion God, or if the Scorpion God's out, to draw cards or to make more 1/1s if you have other enchantments out. So she's always has a 1/1 Death Touch, so she's a nice roadblock as well. Then we have Dusk Urchins, and that is 1 and 2, or 2 and 1 black rather, for a 4/3. Whenever Dusk Urchins attacks or blocks, put a 1/1 counter on it. When Dusk Urchins is put into a graveyard from play, draw a card for each -1/-1 counter on it. So this thing again draws a ton of cards. If it has -1/-1 counter on it, you get to draw from the Dusk Urchins plus trigger from your Scorpion God as well. Then we have Banewhip Punisher, also coming out from Hour of Devastation. Nice uncommon. She's a 2/2 for 3. When she enters the battlefield, you put a -1/-1 counter, and then you could sacrifice her and pay 1 black and destroy target creature with a -1/-1 counter. So does a lot of work. One of the kind of weaker cards in the deck, but still pretty powerful for an uncommon. Okay, then we have the Phyrexian Crusader. This is the big scary Infect champion, 1 and 2 black for a 2/2 first strike. Protection from red and from white with Infect. This guy is usually a big target because everyone hates Infect, and understandably so. Speaking of Infect, we have Icarats. Also 3 casting costs for a 2/1 with Infect. When Icarats enters the battlefield, each player gets a poison counter. So yes, there is another way to win with this deck other than regular damage, and that is with Infect damage, and that's kind of, you know, speeds things along just a tad. Septic Rats going, you know, keeping with Infected Rats, 3 again for a 2/2 with Infect. Whenever Septic Rats attacks, if the defending player is poisoned, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. So not too bad. If you already have done a little bit of Infect damage to your opponent, one of your opponents, and you swing with this, it goes to 3 instead of 2. Not too shabby. On to the 4th drop spot. We have the Fallen Ferromancer. This guy is an absolute freaking all-star in this deck. He costs 3 and 1 red for a 1/1, not the best stats. But he has Infect, and if you tap one and one red, and tap him, Fallen Ferromancer deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and he does it in Infect damage. So, nice mana sink late with direct Infect damage. Alright, then we have the Core Prowler, and this is a 4-drop for a 2/2. Infect, when Core Prowler is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, proliferate. So our first proliferate card, this was a huge thing in New Phyrexia, or Mirrodin Besiege block rather. When he goes to the battlefield, when he goes to the graveyard, all the creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them get an additional one. Also, if they have the players have Infect damage, they get another poison counter. So proliferate is awesome. Corpse Cur next on the 4-drop spot at a 2/2 with Infect. If he dies, then he gets to put target creature with that has Infect back into your hand. So nice little Grave Digger option for your Infect creatures with the Corpse Cur. Next, we have Flesh Eater Imp, and that is 3 and 1 for a 2/2 flyer with Infect. And he says, sacrifice a creature, Flesh Eater Imp gets +1/+1 till end of turn. So if you do have a lot of little tokens out, and you are just real close to killing someone with poison counters, this guy is kind of a game finisher. If you want to win with Infect damage, he gets real big, real fast for a quick flying evasive Alpha Strike. Next at the 4-drop spot, we have our one kind of anthem for Infect creatures, Hand of the Praetors. That's 1 and 3, or 3 and 1 black rather, for a 3/2. He is a zombie with Infect. Other creatures you control with Infect get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a creature spell with Infect, target player gets a poison counter. So, some big beats, some big poisoning happening with the Hand of the Praetors. Next up at the 4-drop spot, we have the Soul Snuffers. Not Infect, this is an Elemental Shaman, I believe from Morningtide, and it's 2 and 2 black for a 3/3. When Soul Snuffers comes into play, put a 1/1 counter on each creature. So that is huge. So he comes down, he's kind of almost a mini board wipe if they have a lot of small things, or if you have a lot of tokens out, and he just kind of wipes the board, and especially if you have the your general out, you're going to be drawing a ton of cards. Next up is the Lockjaw Snapper for a 2/2 with Wither. So kind of the fixed version of Infect. Wither does damage and -1/-1 counters, but does not do poison counters. And it is a Scarecrow. When Lockjaw Snapper is put into a graveyard from play, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature with a -1/-1 counter on it. So if this thing is a Rattlesnake card, if it dies, it becomes like the Soul Snuffers and puts -1/-1 counters on everything. Alright, next up, Skin Renderer, or the Xenomorph as I like to call him. He is 2 and 2 black for a 3/3. When he enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature. So he is either a kill spell, or just, kill spell, draw a card, or just comes down and weakens something big like a general or something to make it a little bit more manageable for your smaller Infect or Wither creatures. Another all-star of the deck, what makes this deck work, is the Kolrath Knight. He is 3 and 2 hybrid black-red for a 3/3 flying Wither, and creatures with -1/-1 counters on them cannot attack or block. And not your creatures, but just opponent's creatures. He is a lockdown card. This card is fantastic. Kolrath Knight is probably one of the top 5 best cards in the deck. Then we have the Ogre Slumlord, neither Wither nor Infect, but he does make tokens. He is 5 for a 3/3. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may put a 1/1 black rat creature token onto the battlefield, and rat creatures you control have Death Touch. So almost like a mini Anthem effect for your rats, which we do have quite a bit of them, and they all have Death Touch as well as Infect. Next we have the Furystoke Giant, and he has another keyword that's kind of key in this deck. 3 for 2 red and a 3/3 For a giant warrior, and this is from Shadowmoor, when Fury Stroke Giant comes into play, other creatures you control gain, tap it. This creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player until end of turn. He also has Persist, so once he dies, he gets to come back with a -1/-1 counter already, so that's nice. And then your whole team could turn sideways and deal direct damage. They could all turn into shocks. We have the Archfiend of Ifnir! Archfiend of Ifnir! I hate the name of this card. And actually, I'm not even too much of a fan of this card in general, but it's okay. It's 5 for a 5/4 flyer. When you cycle or discard another card, you may put -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponent controls. So that's good. It's just, and then you could also cycle them for a card for 2, which sometimes you do. Sometimes you just want a 5/5 flyer. One of the kind of weaker cards, but there are some cards in this deck that do make us, that do want us to discard. So when you get to use that effect, it's just extra bread on the butter.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Otherwise, it's just a 5/4 beat stick in the air. Then also at the 5-drop spot, we have the Puppeteer Click. I love this card. It's 5 for a 3/2 flying. It's not that little scarecrow, it's a bunch of little fairy wizards, if you see on the art, which is kind of fun. When he dies, you put target creature in an opponent's graveyard into play under your control until end of turn, and then you remove it from the game. So you get to reanimate something when this guy comes in. And, you know, kind of smack them in the face with their own stuff, especially if they're doing like Buried Alive or Entomb for it. Also, it does have Persist, so when this guy dies, comes back with a -1/-1 counter on it, and gets to reanimate a second thing. Puppeteer Click is a very, very good commander card if you're running black in general. Midnight Banshee is next, and she kicks off the 6th spot. She is 6, very greedy, 3 black in that 6. She is a 5/5 with Wither, so back to the -1/-1. She is a beautiful lady, as we could see. And then also, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a -1/-1 counter on each non-black creature. So she is a absolute house unless you're playing against a black deck. Then, the last creature in the deck is Big Bad Boy Carnifex Demon. 6 mana, but you get a 6/6 flying demon. Carnifex Demon enters the battlefield with 2 -1/-1 counters on it. If you remove a -1/-1 counter from Carnifex Demon, you get to put a -1/-1 counter on each other creature. This thing is amazing, especially putting counters back on him is nice. With, you know, other cards like the Soul Snuffers and whatnot, you get to put -1/-1 counters and then just completely wipe their board out. So you're drawing a lot of cards, plus you're left with a big beater in the air. Alright, our first enchantment, Phyrexian Reclamation. It costs 1, it's an enchantment, and you get to pay 1 and 1 black, and pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard. A lot of stuff is going to die. You're trading a lot of your infect creatures to make their team weaker or just kill them outright and draw cards. So what better way to get those pesky infect creatures back and wither creatures back than with Phyrexian Reclamation? Even if you're not running a graveyard-centric deck, you want to run this card if you're running black. Next up at the 2-drop spot, Crumbling Ashes. This thing is what makes the world go round as far as this deck goes. This is the Scorpion God's best friend. It costs 1 and 1 black. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, destroy target creature with a -1/-1 counter on it. That's fantastic. Basically, this just sits out. You put a -1/-1 counter on their big-ass creature, even their general or whatnot. Then the next turn, this kills it. So good. So good. Glistening Oil is next. This is a very, like, kind of controversial card, but I kind of like it. It's 2 black, it's an aura, and enchant creature has infect. Okay, so you could put this on your general to have big swings that way, but you could also use it as a slow-moving removal spell, because at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a -1/-1 counter on enchanted creature. Whenever Glistening Oil is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return Glistening Oil to owner's hand. This thing is very versatile, especially for an aura. You could use it as a removal spell. You could use it for big beats with your general or whatever, just giving him infect. Or if you have a lot of blockers up and you don't think that the infect is going to affect you too much and you want to kill something or make it smaller over time, and then you get this back. It is a fantastic card. Next up, another aura, which I'm not huge on because this one doesn't have any reoccursion, but it fits so well in this deck, especially if you slam it on your general. It is Fist of the Demigod, and it is 1 and a hybrid black-red, and as long as enchanted creature is black, it gets +1/+1 and has Wither. Well, Scorpion God's black, so yeah, that guy gets Wither now. That's pretty good. And +1/+1. Oh wait, if it's red, it gets another +1/+1 first strike. So yes, Fist of the Demigod makes it, but just barely. Then we have Everlasting Torment. So this is 2 and 1 hybrid black-red for an enchantment. Players can't gain life. Damage can't be prevented, and all damage is dealt in the form of Wither. Excellent. Excellent, excellent card. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards off this when things start dying, things start hitting the graveyard. And also, again, it shuts off life gain decks like Karlov and all the rest. So it is a fantastic card. Next, we have another engine of the deck, Nest of Scarabs, and a little innocuous uncommon from Amonkhet. This is 2 and a black. Whenever a creature gets a -1/-1 counter, you get to put a 1/1 black Scarab token onto the battlefield, which is just fantastic. It's an 1/1 insect token. This thing is great. Just putting -1/-1 counters on things constantly in this deck, and in big swoops too, not just one at a time. Most of the time, you're just going to be getting tons and tons of black, insect creature tokens, and then you get, if they die, you get to draw cards and Blood Artist shenanigans. It's just out of hand, out of hand. Blowfly Infestation is next. Blowfish? Did I just say Blowfish Infestation? Blowfly Infestation is next. That's 2 and 1 black for an enchantment. This is the ugliest card, ugliest art, and of course I had to get it, shiny just to spotlight how disgusting this card is. I want it in all its glory. This is another just fantastic engine card. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, you put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So you go ahead and you put a -1/-1 counter on something, you kill it. Well, then another -1/-1 counter goes, and then if that dies, then it keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. It's the gift that keeps giving that drives your opponents crazy. Screams Within is next. It's another aura. This is 1 and 2 black. When enchanted creature is put into a graveyard, return Screams from within from your graveyard to play. Again, kind of like Blowfly Infestation and the Black Ooze, or whatever the hell that card was called. It reoccurs. You put something on it. If it's just a 1/1 creature, it kills it. It just keeps bouncing around until there isn't a creature left to attach itself to. Nice little aura. Tainted Strike is next. 1 black, and it's an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains infect until end of turn. What the hell is a combat trick doing in the EDH deck? Well, this thing is actually a very political card. There could be huge swings, going other people's way, and then you could just kind of throw this down and take someone out of nowhere, even if it's not even that player's intention that's attacking another player. Or, of course, you could put it on your own creature, give something infect like your general, and just kill them out of nowhere. Tainted Strike is fantastic. Vandal Blast, just kind of a wrath for artifacts. You could overload and just take everything out. Fantastic card if you're playing red. Dreadbore, a black and a red to destroy target creature or planeswalker. The first of its kind and the best of its kind. Sorcery speed, but it's okay because this isn't sorcery speed. Terminate, destroy target creature, can't regenerate. Probably the best removal spell in these colors. Next up is Rakdos Charm. This is a very underrated card, a black and a red, and it's a modal spell. You get to choose one. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard, so it destroys graveyard-centric decks, or destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So if there's a player that's playing tokens, or just a lot of tokens on the board, this card's gonna punish them. This card has killed people out of nowhere. My buddy Magic Man Sam, also a big fan of this card. Go check his channel out. And this card is just absolutely fantastic. Black Sun Zenith, we're getting to kind of the board wipes, and this one is fantastic for this deck. It's 2 and X, and put an X -1/-1 counter on each creature for X. So it's a board wipe, plus it's going to draw you a ton of cards. And then if you have your Hex Parasite, it could kind of do cleanup work afterwards and get those -1/-1 counters off. It just draws a ton of cards if there's a lot of -1/-1 counters and your general's out. And the good thing about it is if your general dies, he just comes back anyways. So just fantastic. Torment of Hailfire, another 2 and X. And this one's kind of fun. This one's not great, but it's kind of fun. I have a lot of fun with this card. That's what EDH should be, is fun, right? Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So a lot of times when you drop this late game, they're just going to be, you know, checking their hand, which isn't bad. You get some hand destruction, or, you know, if they're gaining a bunch of life, which they shouldn't be with all your, you can't gain life for the rest of the game cards. You know, this thing makes them sack permanents or whatever. It gives them a choice. It's a good Punisher mechanic, which usually is an oxymoron, but this one actually is. Languish is up next. Should be a Damnation probably, but I like it a little bit more just because it gives everything -4/-4, and it's just kind of more on theme with the deck. It's not as good as Damnation, but I like it because it just seems more like flavor win for the deck. Alright, on to the artifacts. Soul Ring. No explanation. More Mana Rocks, Rakdos Signet. Of course, we're in black and red, so not the best mana ramping spells, so we use what we can. As well as Mind Stone. Mind Stone, another Mana Rock for 2, just gives you colorless mana, but you could sack it when you don't need it for a card. Lightning Greaves and its buddy Swiftfoot Boots, of course. You know, one gives Shroud, one gives Hexproof. Both go in pretty much every EDH deck. Contagion Clasp, on the other hand, is more on theme with the deck. 2, when you put it down, you put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, so that's very nice and very on theme. And then, while it's out, you could tap forward, tap it, and proliferate. So just keep getting those proliferate triggers, those poison counters, and all the -1/-1. Darksteel Ignite, again, more Mana Rocks. Then we have Heartstone, not Hearthstone, because Hearthstone is terrible, but Heartstone. This is a 3 casting cost artifact, and basically the cost of each creature ability requiring activation cost is reduced by 1. This cannot reduce an ability's generic mana cost to less than 1. So this is very nice to start machine gunning with our general. That, you know, 3 to put a -1/-1 counter on something is kind of a hefty price to pay, especially in a deck that's not running green. But with this, you could kind of machine gun a little bit better with just two mana to do it. So that is a little bit easier of a pill to swallow. Next up, this card is just mean. It's fantastic, but it's mean. Grafted Exoskeleton is equipment for 4. Target creature gains infect, but it also gets +2/+2, and then when it's removed, it kills the creature it was attached to. So just absolutely fantastic to put this on the general, making him a 8/7, and then just swinging away with a giant Lucille-style baseball bat. Next, we have Nevenriel's Disc, because it costs 4, and it blows up the world, and you need that in these colors because we can't deal with enchantments, but we can deal with it with Nevenriel's Disc. Alright, we have Cauldron of Souls. Cauldron of Souls is amazing in this deck. It is 5, and you get to tap it and choose any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures gain persist until end of turn. So, all those creatures that are going to the graveyard, well, they just come back with -1/-1 counters on it. And it's just great. It saves things, and it draws you cards. This card is fantastic in this deck. last but not least at all, definitely not least, is Contagion Engine. Contagion class Big Brother. It costs 6, but when it comes onto the battlefield, you get to put a -1/-1 counter on every target creature that your opponents control. So this thing is one-sided, huge -1/-1 counter giver, and then just like Contagion class, you could tap for and proliferate, then proliferate again. Oh no, you didn't. Yeah, that is amazing stuff. So 4, you not only get to double, or put another counter, poison counter on a player, or more -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, but then you get to do it again. Absolutely fantastic card. We're gonna run through the lands very fast because this is the most boring parts of EDH deck techs. We have Bloodstained Mire, Blood Crypt, I can never say this card right. Black Cleave Cliffs, sure. Everyone's, the sexiest Magic card in history. Dragon Skull Summit, the old school awesome art when it was still a dragon and not a dinosaur. We have Smoldering Marsh, sure. We have Foreboding Ruins, sure. Just black-red, dual lands that you need to run. We have Tainted Peak, very nice. Temple of Malice, the Scry land, sure. This card kind of lacks, it's all about drawing cards, but it does lack kind of in the early game, so stuff like Temple of Malice is nice. We have Canyon Slough, I don't know, the sewer of Amonkhet, basically. Yeah, Cycle Land, that kind of helps with Archfiend of Ifnir. We have the Rakdos Carnarium, nice bounce land, of course. The worst man land, but that's the colors that we're working with, so Lava Claw Reaches. We have the gain lands. We have Acom Refuge and Bloodfell Caves. We have one of the worst dual lands in the game. We have Rakdos Guildgate and its little brother, Cinder Barons. Just again, it's very important, especially with Scorpion God's activation costs of hitting your black and red, so that's why we gotta run all the dual lands, even if they're bad. Then we have Shadowblood Ridge. Nice, you get to tap 1 and tap it, and it gives you black and red, so especially nice once you have your Heartstone out. It doesn't produce mana on its own, which is kind of tricky, kind of messes with people, but it is kind of like a signet, but it's free because it's a land. Command Tower, of course. We have the Inkmoth Nexus, so nice infect land, turns into a creature, flying, just more infect basically. This one is I usually run in all red EDH decks. Kur Keep. You get to tap 1 and red and tap it, and it puts out a 0/1 Cobalt. So usually you're doing that for blockers or whatever, sack fodder, but this guy produces a little Cobalts that you could just sting with your Scorpion God and get cards. For those huge swings, especially when the Scorpion God is suited up with a nice aura or an artifact, equipment rather, Rogue's Passage makes him unblockable, game-changing. We have Westvale Abbey for when we do have all those little tokens out. This is very nice. It turns into the big bad boss. Ghost Quarter, because Ghost Quarter kills problem lands. You want to get rid of Maze of Iths and stuff like that. You know how to use Ghost Quarter by now. Tumble the False God. Yep. More mana. We need mana. Mutavault turns into a creature. It has no real tribal synergies, which is kind of a bummer. I guess you could give it Death Touch if you have like an Ogre Slumlord out, make it a rat. But this deck kind of lacks on early aggression for an aggro deck, which is kind of, sounds weird, but you know, a 2/2, it helps. Bojuka Bog, because every black deck should have Bojuka Bog. Bad fetch lands, Terramorphic Expanse, and Uncharted, or Evolving Wilds, Uncharted Wilds. You know them by now. Rixmati, Dungeon Palace, you know, tap 3, basically, one red, 1 black. You get to, you know, each player draws a card, discards a card. You want to filter, sure. Cycle lands, Baron Moor, Forgotten Cave, cycle lands, you need cards, 4 swamps, and 4 mountains. That's the deck. That is the Scorpion God. A lot more interesting than the Scorpion King movie. So play this. Commander, if you want, if you like this deck tech. It's kind of long, but we had a lot of fun doing it. At least I had a lot of fun talking. You know, like, subscribe, do everything that YouTube people tell you to do. Find me on Twitter at OrzovDone. You could also find me on Facebook and Instagram at They Said We Said. So until next time, this is your deck tech, and I'll see you at the tables.